My adoptive mom gave me a $35,000 bill for raising me at my birthday dinner. So I sold the family cafe out from under her, my adoptive dad, and my real sister, and walked out before they even cut the cake. I knew something was off the second I walked through the heavy glass doors of Delaney's, the fanciest restaurant in downtown Boston. The place smelled like truffle oil and old money, and every head turned when I stepped inside, still half in my EMT uniform. I had rushed over straight from my shift, heart stupidly full of excitement, thinking we were celebrating our birthdays, mine and Melody's, together like we always did. My name's Zoe Hart. I'm 30 years old, and I live in a tiny walk-up apartment about 15 minutes from the hospital where I work nights. Adopted at 8 years old by the Harveys, big suburban family, golden retriever, white picket fence, all that crap, I grew up always feeling like I was almost part of the family. Almost. But not quite. Tonight proved it. Zoe. Over here. Melody waved at me from the private dining room. She looked like a magazine ad, hair curled just right, makeup flawless, wearing a cream silk dress that probably cost more than my car payment. I tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear, smiled tight, and walked over. The table was already full. My adoptive parents, Margaret and Thomas, sat at the head, flanked by Melody's boyfriend and a few cousins. The air smelled like champagne and steak, and at first it did feel good. Familiar. Comfortable. Until the gifts started. First was Melody. Thomas stood up, beaming like he was handing out an Oscar. "To our beautiful daughter Melody," he said, holding out a big white envelope tied with a gold ribbon. "We are so proud of you." Melody gasped when she opened it. "An art residency in Florence," she squealed, clutching the packet of papers to her chest like it was a life raft. "Oh my God, this is incredible." Everyone clapped. Margaret wiped away a fake tear. Even the waiter clapped. I sat there, clapping too, trying to ignore the sharp little twist in my gut. Then Margaret smiled at me, that tight, practiced smile, and said, "And for Zoe." She slid a plain manila envelope across the table. No ribbon. No gold. I took it slowly. My hand shook a little, but I kept the smile glued to my face. Everyone leaned in, watching like it was a game show. Inside was a letter. A single page. As I read it, the words blurred for a second. It was a list. An itemized bill, basically. Childhood expenses. Pediatric care, $5,700. Dance lessons, $2,400. Tutoring, $8,000. Total at the bottom, $35,000. In bold. And a note underneath, reimbursement appreciated within the next 12 months. I looked up slowly. No one looked embarrassed. No one looked sorry. In fact, Margaret was nodding like this was totally reasonable. "We just thought it was fair," Thomas said, clearing his throat. "You know, since Melody, well, she'll be carrying on the family legacy. Grandkids and all." "Exactly," Margaret chimed in, like she was explaining a math problem to a toddler. "We invested in you, Zoe, but you know, not everyone pays dividends." I don't know how I kept smiling. I don't know how I didn't flip the table right then and there. I swallowed the burn in my throat, tucked the letter back into the envelope, and said softly, "Thank you so much. This means a lot." Melody didn't even look up. She was too busy flipping through her Florence packet, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. The waiter came by with the cake then, 2 names written on it, "Happy Birthday Melody." There was no Zoe anywhere. Just a big blank space under hers, like maybe they had run out of frosting. Or maybe, more honestly, they had just run out of care. I clapped when Melody blew out her candles. I even cheered when she made a wish. Because if I had learned anything in 30 years with this family, it was how to smile when you were bleeding inside. And tonight, I bled. About a year before that birthday dinner, I stood in the city clerk's office holding a cheap plastic pen, waiting for my name to dry on the papers they handed me. It was Melody's idea. Or at least, that's what Margaret said when she called me at work one afternoon, acting all breezy. "Zoe, honey," she'd said. "We just need a quick favor. Some paperwork stuff for the cafe. Nothing serious. Just for insurance purposes." Their cafe, Lakeside Brews, had been in the family forever. A little wood-paneled place right on Lake Winthrop, the kind of spot where old men played chess and kids spilled hot chocolate on the floor. I used to mop that floor every Saturday growing up, thinking it made me part of something. Thinking it mattered. Now, standing under those humming fluorescent lights, I felt the paper vibrate slightly in my hands. It wasn't just insurance stuff. Not even close. The document was titled, Change of Ownership and Co-Signatory Rights. In neat legal language, it named me, Zoe Hart, as one of the official owners of Lakeside Brews. I signed without asking a single question. Smiling. Laughing even when Margaret clucked about how complicated business laws are these days. Melody stood beside her, filing her nails. But inside, something felt wrong. Too easy. Too quiet. That night, after they hugged me and thanked me for being such a sweetheart, I didn't celebrate. I didn't even tell my roommate. I just drove straight home, locked my bedroom door, and scanned every page into my laptop. Saved them all to a flash drive. Then uploaded them again to cloud storage. Then emailed copies to myself, 2 different addresses. Just in case. I didn't know exactly what they were planning. But I knew enough not to trust that sugary smile on Margaret's face. For the next few months, I played along. Still helping at the cafe on weekends. Still pretending I was just a good daughter doing my part. At night, when my shift ended, I sat in the back corner of the ambulance station, clicking through real estate listings on my phone. Learning words like valuation and exit clause. Watching webinars about how to sell a small business. I met with 2 different business brokers under the excuse of career planning. One even gave me a checklist: prepare taxes, get a property appraisal, organize employee contracts. I wasn't just getting ready to protect myself. I was getting ready to leave. Then one night, everything hardened. Cemented. I had finished a 16-hour shift and stopped by the cafe to pick up some extra coffee. As I turned the corner by the kitchen, I heard Melody's voice drifting from the office, sharp and careless. Zoe? She's just a placeholder. She's not really family. She laughed, a quick, mean little bark of a laugh, and the words hit me like a slap across the face. Not really family. I stood there, frozen, while Melody and Margaret rattled off some plans for rebranding the cafe after Melody's big art break. Talking like they owned the future and I was just a speck they had to step around. When Melody left, I slipped into the office and stared at the old framed family photo on the desk, me standing stiff and small between Margaret and Thomas, Melody in the middle, her arm draped around their shoulders like she belonged. For the first time, I didn't feel sad. I felt clear. If they thought I was just a placeholder, fine. But they were about to find out exactly how wrong they were. Back in the present, at that birthday dinner, I tucked the reimbursement letter into my purse and wiped my hands on the linen napkin like nothing had happened. They thought I would cry. Or argue. Or maybe just sit there, humiliated. Instead, I stood up slowly, reached into my bag again, and pulled out a thick white envelope, the kind lawyers use when they mean business. Before we cut the cake, I said, my voice light, almost cheerful, I have something for you too. Margaret blinked. Thomas set down his wine glass, confused. Melody barely looked up from her Florence packet. I placed the envelope right in front of them, dead center on the table. What's this? Thomas asked, trying to keep the smile in his voice. I didn't answer. I just watched. He opened it first, tugging the papers free. Margaret leaned over his shoulder, reading along. Melody craned her neck, her brow furrowing. It took about 10 seconds for the smiles to drop. This is a sale agreement, Margaret said slowly, like her brain was refusing to process the words. Correct, I said, still smiling. Thomas flipped through the pages. His face turned red, then pale. You sold it? He croaked. Sold what? Melody blurted out. The cafe, I said. Calm. Even. Lakeside Brews. The air drained from the room like someone had opened a giant invisible vacuum. I could hear forks clink onto plates. A glass tipped somewhere. No one moved. You can't do that. Margaret hissed, snapping her head toward me. It's a family business. I shrugged. Not according to the deed. Thomas fumbled through the papers, scanning for a loophole, something, anything, that would save them. There wasn't one. I made sure of that months ago. You didn't even tell us. Melody yelped, her voice pitching higher. I have plans. I was counting on the cafe to fund your little Florence fantasy? I finished for her, still smiling. Melody's mouth flapped open, but no sound came out. Who even bought it? Thomas asked, his voice shaking now. A restaurant group, I said casually. Expanding into the lakeside area. They made a very generous offer once they saw the numbers. Margaret was trembling so hard she had to set down her champagne flute. You tricked us, she whispered. No, I said, pushing my chair back. You handed it to me. You just didn't bother to read the fine print. I picked up my purse, slinging it over my shoulder. The room stayed frozen, full of rich food and broken dreams. Well, I said brightly, thanks for the birthday dinner. I started walking toward the door. Halfway there, I turned back just once. Oh, I added, catching Margaret's eye. Consider the $35,000. Paid in full. And then I walked out, heels clicking against the marble floor, leaving them behind, clutching empty envelopes and a future that wasn't theirs anymore. It was almost midnight when the pounding started. At first, I thought it was just some drunk idiot mistaking my apartment for theirs. It wouldn't have been the first time in this neighborhood. But when I peeked through the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was Thomas. My adoptive father. His fist hammered the door again, rattling the frame. His face was twisted, red with fury, sweat glistening at his temples. I thought about ignoring him. Letting him stew out there all night. But then I remembered, this was my house now. My life. My terms. I opened the door. He barreled inside before I could even step back, the stink of whiskey and rage clinging to him like smoke. His voice thundered against the walls. How could you do this to us? He roared, pacing the tiny living room like a caged animal. You ruined us, Zoe. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over my chest. Calm. Detached. You did it to yourselves, I said. He stopped, breathing hard, jabbing a finger at me. We trusted you. We let you into our family. We gave you everything. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. You gave me a bill for 35 grand as a birthday present. You're ungrateful, he spat. You're bitter. You'll die alone. Maybe, I said, shrugging. But at least I won't owe anybody a damn thing. His face twisted into something ugly. For a second, I thought he might actually hit me. I didn't move. You sold our future, he said, voice breaking now. Melody was supposed to take over the cafe. You were supposed to help until she was ready. You didn't want a daughter, I said quietly. You wanted cheap labor. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, fists clenching and unclenching like he couldn't decide whether to yell or beg. You don't understand, he said finally. We needed that cafe. No, I said, stepping forward so he had no choice but to back up toward the door. You needed me. You needed me to stay small, stay grateful, stay stupid. So you could keep bleeding me dry. He stumbled back another step, caught off guard by the ice in my voice. I gave him a thin, polite smile, the same one they always gave me when they were lying to my face. Oh, I added casually, you'll be happy to know the new owner's a real professional. Knows the restaurant business inside and out. His eyes narrowed. Who? I leaned in just a little, just enough. Remember Logan? My old paramedic partner? The one you said wasn't our kind of people? I smiled wider. He owns a chain of cafe bistros now. Lakeside Brews is going to be his newest location. Thomas's face went slack. All the fight drained out of him at once. I stepped back and held the door open. You should go, I said. I think you have some packing to do. He stared at me for one long, hollow second. Then he shoved past me into the night, muttering curses under his breath. I locked the door behind him. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like the one standing inside, keeping the wolves out. It was about a week later, during my night shift at the ER, when Melody finally snapped. I was coming back from triage, scrubbing my hands at the sink, when I heard the commotion at the front desk. I recognized her voice instantly, sharp, frantic, way too loud for the hospital at midnight. I need to speak to Zoe Hart. Right now. I wiped my hands on a paper towel and walked out into the lobby. There she was, standing under the flickering fluorescent lights, dressed like she was about to walk a Milan runway instead of storming into an ER. Her hair was perfectly curled. Her shoes probably cost more than my whole paycheck. But her face was a mess. Smeared makeup, puffy eyes, frantic energy radiating off her like static. I kept my voice even. Melody. You can't be here. She spun toward me like a heat-seeking missile. You have to fix this. I glanced at the security guard hovering by the entrance. We can talk outside for 5 minutes. Then you leave. Understand? She nodded, teeth gritted. We stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cold air hitting us both hard. The second the doors shut behind us, Melody exploded. You ruined everything, she shrieked. The residency, it's gone. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? They were counting on the cafe profits to cover the final fees, she said, practically spitting the words. The scholarship committee called this morning. They said without financial backing, I'm out. She folded her arms across her chest like a sulky teenager. I hope you're happy. I leaned back against the brick wall, arms crossed. The city buzzed around us, sirens in the distance, the hum of street lights overhead. I let the silence stretch until she squirmed. You know, I said finally, I lived out of my car when I was finishing school. Melody blinked, caught off guard. Took triple shifts at the diner. Slept in the parking lot between classes and shifts, I continued. You never noticed. You never asked. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then shut it. I didn't have anyone paying my way to Italy, I said softly. Hell, I didn't even have anyone remembering my birthday half the time. Melody's lip trembled for half a second. I didn't know, she muttered. I never thought you were serious about that stuff. I laughed, not cruel, not angry. Just tired. No, I said, pushing off the wall and stepping past her. You never thought of me at all. I didn't wait for her to answer. I walked back inside the ER, past the security guard, past the buzzing overhead lights, and back into the life I had built without them. Behind me, through the glass doors, I saw Melody standing there, small and stunned, clutching her designer bag like it could shield her from the truth. It couldn't. Nothing could now. It was a little after dawn when I spotted her. I had just finished another brutal overnight shift, brain fuzzy with exhaustion, ready to crawl home and sleep for a full day. I pushed open the ER doors, coffee in hand, and there she was, Margaret. Sitting stiffly on the edge of a cement bench, right under the buzzing hospital parking lot lights, holding something in her lap. She looked awful. Makeup smeared, hair frizzed from the damp air, heels clicking nervously against the ground. And in her hands, a battered old photo album. The kind with the sticky plastic pages and faded snapshots from decades ago. When she saw me, she stood up too fast, the album almost slipping from her fingers. Zoe, she called out, voice shaking. Please. I stopped a few feet away. Kept my hands buried in my jacket pockets. Please, she said again, stepping closer. We need to talk. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I just let her scramble. Your father, she said, blinking fast. He's not doing well. He's been sick, he's stressed beyond what he can handle. We had to move into a trailer park by the old highway. It's bad, Zoe. She held out the photo album like it was some kind of offering. I found all your old pictures, she said, flipping open a page with trembling fingers. Your first Christmas with us. Your first day of school. Look, sweetheart. You were always our daughter. She said the word daughter like it was supposed to be a magic spell, like it could erase the 30 years of being second best. I looked down at the photo album. The pictures were there, proof that once, maybe, they had tried. Or at least pretended. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. You only call me daughter, I said quietly, when you need something. Margaret flinched like I had slapped her. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but I didn't give her the chance. I stepped around her, coffee still in hand, feet moving steady toward my car. Zoe, she called after me, her voice cracking. Please, don't do this. We need you. We love you. I didn't turn around. I didn't answer. I slid into my car, shut the door, and sat there for a moment, watching her through the windshield, tiny and desperate and still clutching that stupid photo album like it could rewind time. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Unknown number. I ignored it. Some debts, I realized, were never meant to be paid. Some families, no matter how much you gave, would always treat you like a guest in your own life. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel guilty for walking away. I just felt free. I was halfway through laundry day when I got the alert. My phone buzzed sharply against the kitchen counter, a notification from my bank app lighting up the screen, unauthorized access attempt detected. Account temporarily locked. I stared at it for a second, letting it sink in. No panic. No real surprise. I just smiled. Because I already knew who it was. Months ago, after things started going sour, I had set up a decoy account. One that looked like my primary savings, complete with a nice juicy balance number right at the top. Melody had always been bad at hiding her snooping, and I had counted on her being worse when she got desperate. I tapped the app open, confirming it. Sure enough, someone had tried to transfer funds out of the decoy. And then, right on cue, my phone rang. Melody's name lit up the screen, vibrating like crazy. I let it buzz twice before answering. Zoe, she burst out, not even bothering with a hello. Something's wrong. I logged in to move some money and it's all gone. I walked over to the window, staring out at the gray Boston afternoon, calm as a sleeping cat. You mean the account you weren't supposed to have access to? I asked, voice mild. There was a pause. Just long enough to confirm everything I needed to know. I thought it was ours, she said, grasping for any excuse. Family money. You know, for emergencies. I laughed under my breath. Since when am I your emergency fund? You don't understand, she said quickly, panic rising. Florence was just the beginning. I had plans. Big plans. I need that money. You needed it, I corrected. Past tense. She went silent. Probably realizing there was no way to spin this. You were fishing, Melody, I said. And you took the bait. You can't do this, she shrieked, voice cracking. You can't leave me with nothing. I didn't leave you with nothing, I said quietly. You did that all on your own. There was a beat of silence. Then the meltdown hit full force. I'm gonna sue you, she screamed into the phone. You think you're so smart, but you're a thief, Zoe. You stole from us. I'll take you to court. I pulled the phone away from my ear, wincing at the volume. Good luck, I said, and ended the call. I blocked her number before she could call again. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, finished folding my laundry, and smiled. Because if there was one thing Melody Harvey had never understood, it was that you can't steal from someone who was never playing your game to begin with. It was a few days later when I saw the headline pop up on my phone. Local favorite Lakeside Brews shuts down amid bankruptcy scandal. I clicked it open without thinking, sipping my coffee as the article loaded. It was surreal, reading about it like I wasn't tied to it at all. Like I was just another stranger skimming the news. The article went into brutal detail. After the sale, Thomas and Margaret had apparently tried to open a new cafe in some strip mall outside of town. It failed miserably. No loyal customers. No brand recognition. No money. And without the steady income from Lakeside Brews, everything collapsed. Their business credit lines defaulted. Their personal savings dried up. Their house had already been mortgaged to the ceiling. There was even a passing mention of Thomas having a stress-related hospitalization, which the article phrased as politely as it could, but the message was clear. He had cracked under the pressure. I sat back in my chair, letting it all wash over me. I didn't feel hate. I didn't feel joy. Just peace. Like standing on the shore after a hurricane, looking out at the wreckage, knowing you didn't cause the storm, but you sure as hell survived it. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down. Unknown number. I didn't even have to check the voicemail to know who it was. I let it ring until it cut off on its own. Then I blocked the number without hesitation. A few minutes later, a text came through from an unfamiliar email address. Please, just talk to me. We can fix this. We're still family. Dad. I deleted it without reading any further. Family, I thought, staring at the blank screen. That word had always been their shield. Their excuse. Their leash. But not anymore. Later that afternoon, I walked down to the lakeside. The autumn air was crisp, the water flat and endless. I tossed a stone into the lake and watched the ripples stretch out, wide and clean. It was over. For them, for me, all of it. The family business was gone. The debts were theirs now. The future they had mapped out on my back had collapsed in on itself. And I was free. Really, truly free. It was a couple weeks later when the letter showed up. Plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name, scribbled across the front in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. I knew it was from Melody before I even opened it. For a second, I almost tossed it straight into the trash. Part of me didn't want to hear whatever last excuse or tantrum she had left. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe habit, made me peel it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. No frills. No games. It wasn't what I expected. There was no begging. No blaming. Just a simple, messy apology. Melody wrote that she was sorry. Really sorry. She said she had been blind, selfish, cruel without even realizing it. She said she hadn't understood what it meant to be family until there was no one left to lean on. No one left to cover for her. She said she missed me. That she wished she had been a better sister. That she would carry the guilt with her for the rest of her life. I read the whole thing once. Then again. And then, quietly, I folded it back up, walked over to the kitchen recycling bin, and dropped it in without a second thought. Because I didn't need an apology. I didn't need regret. Or guilt. Or promises to do better next time. What I needed, what I had finally found, was peace. No strings. No chains. No more reaching backward into a life that had never really wanted me. Melody's words floated somewhere behind me as I washed my hands, brewed a fresh cup of coffee, and opened the windows wide to let the cool, clean air fill the room. Forgiveness wasn't about letting them back in. It was about letting myself go. The sun was just starting to rise when I stepped out onto the balcony, coffee mug warm in my hands. I stood there for a minute, letting the breeze tug at the hem of my sweatshirt, watching the sky stretch and yawn awake. Pale pinks and soft oranges bleeding into the edges of the city skyline. Below me, the streets of Boston were still half asleep. A few early dog walkers. A couple of taxis crawling past. But up here, it was silent. I took a slow sip of coffee and leaned against the railing. No debt. No guilt. No demands waiting on the other side of a buzzing phone. The new apartment was small but beautiful, 9th floor, corner unit, big windows that caught every inch of the morning light. I had picked it myself. Signed the lease without telling a single soul. No one to weigh in. No one to judge. Just me. A little closer to work, a little closer to the life I was finally building for myself, piece by piece. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched a bird lift off from a telephone wire, wings stretching wide, rising up into the blank sky without hesitation, without second guessing. I smiled. This was what freedom felt like. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not some Hollywood ending with shouting and door slamming. Just quiet. A soft, sturdy kind of peace that wrapped around me like a second skin. Behind me, on the kitchen counter, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. I didn't even glance at it this time. Just hit silent with one thumb and turned my back to it. There was nothing left back there worth answering for. I walked back inside, barefoot on the cool hardwood floors, the smell of coffee still curling through the air. Today was mine. Tomorrow, too. For the first time in my life, I didn't belong to anyone else's plans. I belonged to myself.